By virtue of the calendar, it's going to be a long time until I get to talk about a Rancid record on this channel. And honestly, that kind of breaks my heart. If you were to ask me who the best punk band of all time is, I'd probably say the Ramones. But if I thought about it a little bit harder, I'd probably then pivot to Rancid. It's a debate that I will never settle with myself. But instead of litigating issues that nobody cares about, I'll do the internet thing, I'll put my feet up, and I'll create an arbitrary list. So here it is, my ranking of most of Rancid's discography.
Come on, I said at the beginning,
right.
If you want to have a chance to fix things, we got to be honest and put it on the table.
Yeah, I'm going to start this with a cop-out. I'm going to say that their two most recent releases aren't part of the central canon. Obviously, that's ridiculous, but it's my channel.
You don't produce this show, I do.
Seriously though, the reason for excluding 2014's Honor Is All We Know and 2017's Troublemaker is simply that I would rank them at the bottom, and I don't think that's fair. Those are two albums that are perfectly fine on their own, but they are fighting a huge wave of nostalgia. Alright, I wasted enough time, let's get to the actual list. Number 7, the self-titled debut album from 1993. I get it, I might catch some heat here for putting this at the bottom of the list, but I'm going to try to defend my choice. While it's a really strong debut, I look at this as more of pre-Rancid than proper Rancid. That totally makes sense, doesn't it?
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
I say this because it's missing the two critical elements of a Rancid experience. The first one is obvious, it doesn't have Lars Frederiksen. The great Rancid albums are an amazing ebb and flow between the two and sometimes three vocalists. Lars Frederiksen and Tim Armstrong are the best vocal duo in the history of punk. Lars not being there simply makes this album kind of incomplete. Secondly, and possibly more important, the album is a conscious split from the legacy of Operation Ivy. It's completely understandable that Tim Armstrong and Matt Freeman, they wanted to carve out a new legacy with a new band. But the spirit of Operation Ivy is what codified Rancid into a timeless piece of art. Next week I'll come in and rank every Op Ivy album. Comment below if you get the joke. Oh, also, this album's not produced by Brett Gurewitz, and so that makes a huge difference. Look, on their own, Rancid is a very good straight-up punk band. But I kind of think in my heart, if they would have just kept going that route, they would have gone the way of a lot of the Lookout bands and kind of faded into the late 90s. With all that negativity said, give it a spin. It's a really good album. There's some great bass lines, there's some great songs, there's some great lyrics. It's just not quite up to the standard. In my opinion, just me, only me, my opinion, it's not up to the standard of the other classic Rancid albums. Number 6, the other self-titled album, the one that came out in 2000. You know, in some ways, I can place the same general criticisms I have of the debut on their other self-titled album. Lars is definitely here, and they had long embraced the legacy of Operation Ivy, but there's a little bit of a musical midlife crisis on this thing. And who knows exactly what the actual reason was for this, but it's clearly there. Was it a response to the growing popularity of radio-friendly pop punk? Was it a reaction to the huge amount of production they included on Life Won't Wait? I don't really know. But this album really kind of has the vibe of some veterans screaming out that they still got it. Even with this aggression, this is still obviously a classic Rancid release. You can make the argument that Matt Freeman is the MVP of every Rancid release just based on his bass chops, but his vocal contributions on this album really offer a nice contrast to both Tim and Lars. Side note, this is probably the first real punk album I ever owned, so despite all my misgivings about it, I have a ton of affection for it. Number 5, Life Won't Wait. I'll be honest, from this point on, it's kind of difficult to rank these into different tiers. I think they're all great albums, some of the best music ever written. It's really just a matter of personal preference from this point on, in my opinion. With all that said, I kind of think Life Won't Wait is a bit of an outlier compared to the rest of the catalog. I kind of feel like some of the earlier albums I reference lack a little bit of that soul that makes Rancid so special. Life Won't Wait is not in that category. Life Won't Wait is nothing but soul. Songs like Hoover Street, New Dress, Leicester Square, Who Would Have Thought, and basically every song after The Wolf are unmistakably punk, but they're sound of a highly sophisticated, soulful unit. I can't really say there's anything wrong with any of the songs on an individual basis. I do think though as an album, it's a little self-indulgent. It's the only Rancid release to actually go over an hour in runtime, and it's not super long, but compared to everything else in their catalog, it's an album you need to listen to if you're in a very, very specific mood. Number 4, Let the Dominoes Fall. I'm sure you're shocked to see this one this high, but I kind of think this belongs with the definitional Rancid releases.
Fuck!
fucking bullshit!
Given that this is the first release after Brett Reed left and it was released outside of Rancid having some connection to mainstream music, I think it's often been overlooked as a classical album. On Let the Dominoes Fall, Rancid is clearly an older band, and they embrace that fact. I would even argue they excel at being elder statesmen. Well, they do as good a job as anyone as being old punks, which is a bit of an oxymoron. The album is both a reflection on Rancid's career and a survey of their contemporary surroundings. This is going to sound really pretentious, but hear me out.
I can handle things, I'm smart! Not like everybody says! Like dumb, I'm smart, and I want respect!
Rancid's music is always political, but it's more of class poetry than a specific ideology or commentary. Although Let the Dominoes Fall really puts those two threads together in a nice clean package. Also, it has nothing to do with what I'm talking about here, but if you ever get a chance, give a listen to the acoustic version of this album. It really highlights how well written these songs are. Number 3, Indestructible. Oh boy, we got to address this one, don't we? Look, if this channel is still in existence in 2023, I'll probably spend a month making videos about Indestructible. But for now, this will have to do. This is kind of sort of Rancid's major label debut because they signed a distribution deal with Warner Brothers Records. And if you didn't know that information, don't worry, because it's really not relevant to anything else. Other than like the really weird backlash that some of the losers gave to it.
You sold out! You sold out! You sold out!
Look, all of their albums are deeply personal, but this is the one album that the audience is acutely aware of who or what the songs are referencing. The deaths of Joe Strummer and Lars's brother Robert, and of course Tim's divorce from Brody, are all on display here. Now look, those are some pretty dark topics on their own, but as a whole, the album really delivers on its namesake. It's a dark album for sure, but it really points the listener in a resilient direction. On top of the dynamic lyrical content, it really seems to capture Rancid at a bit of a performance peak. Rancid albums have always sounded great, especially for punk rock, but I gotta say, Mr. Brett really earned his pay on this bad boy. This isn't the best collection of Rancid songs, but it is the band at the peak of their powers. Number 2, Let's Go. Somehow I feel like Let's Go actually flies under the radar sometimes. I mean, it's maybe the forgotten album in the mainstream punk boom of 1994. In February, Green Day changed the landscape with Doogie, and a few months later, the Offspring would release the smash hit, Smash. Now, Smash would go on to become the best-selling independent album in history. Well, the same independent label that released Smash also put out Let's Go over the summer. Let's Go wasn't the hit that those other two albums became, but it definitely attracted major label attention for the band. And as we all know, Rancid eventually rebuffed the majors at the 11th hour. We may never know what Brett and Epitaph offered Rancid to stay, but I don't think it's a stretch to really think that because of what they were given at that time, that's why they've had the sustained career that they have now. The majors can make some dumb decisions sometimes, but you can't really blame them for thinking that Rancid would be the next big thing after hearing Let's Go. This is 23 songs of absolute perfection. If you think I underrated their debut, I would counter by saying that the debut is great, but Let's Go is a perfected version of that original concept. It's got everything: thumping bass lines, dueling guitars, amazing vocals, and of course, excellent songwriting. Look, when your topics of songs range from like X-Men characters to homelessness, you know you've got a classic on your hands. And finally, without Let's Go, you wouldn't have Radio. In my opinion, it's one of the 2 essential Rancid songs. And how crazy is it that Billy Joe Armstrong actually co-wrote it? Fun fact I always like to think about. Number 1, And Out Come the Wolves. Oh yeah, real original on my part putting that in number 1.
Thanks, Captain Obvious.
But it's the right answer. And it's not negotiable. Seriously though. It's got the most iconic album cover, it's the best collection of songs, and it's the first time the band ever worked with the legendary Jerry Finn. And I think honestly, even though they didn't go to a major label, if they did, this is probably what they would have produced on a major label. The difference would be probably it would just have ended up way bigger. But I think everything worked out for the band in the long run. Earlier I mentioned that I'll have an internal debate at times of who the greatest punk band of all time is, but there's no debate in my opinion what the greatest punk album is. It's this one. Bar none. Again, non-negotiable. I don't feel like a broad review of the album would really do it justice, so instead I'm just going to say like maybe a quick word or two, a sentence or two about every single song on this album. Only the most iconic bass line ever. Honestly, the weakest track on this thing, but still very strong. This is the other essential Rancid song. If you grew up with this music, this song just turns you into a 15-year-old immediately. It's a little over memed, but it's the one Rancid song that all your normie friends know. Gotta give a bit of a hot take here. I like NoFX's version better, but I think that speaks to how great the songwriting is here. Man, the emotion when Tim sings, "The feeling isn't fear, it's just telling you to move." Just gets you right there. In the same vein, the common man doesn't suffer pain like this. Only the sword that has never been kissed. Let us adore our beautiful son. He's writing on the rivers of Babylon. Wish I wrote that lyric. I don't even write songs. This time Lars brings the poetry. God damn it, man, I almost had it. Well, I did it again. I do it out of habit. While I'm none, it ain't no fun. I'm less than zero when you add up the sum. Again, just perfect songwriting in every one of these tracks. This is the other one that all the normies know. Also, I think a lot of these songs, but Ruby Soho in particular, really illustrates that this band could write like the heartbreak type songs. It wasn't just the MTV pop punk bands that could pull on the heartstrings and talk about relationships. Another song that just moves anybody who's got a soul. Yet another iconic bass line. And how cool is it that you could tell the story of a whole other band in a single song? Pretty awesome. The rare sunshine amongst all this bleak music. These lyrics are so good. This could be covered by country. Hey, it's me from the future. I have no idea what the hell happened to my recording right there. What I do know is that I was trying to say that Old Friends' lyrical content are amazing, and it easily could be included in like something for country and western or any other genre, not just limited to punk. I love how they just casually wrote a song about their contract signing process. Basically the concept of this whole album, if you really think about it.
Little Robbie was a punk rocker.
What the hell was that? This one has some phenomenal vocal contrast between Tim and Lars. They just really are in sync on this one. Again, the Paul and John of punk rock? I think so. Another heartstring song. And a lot of bands try to dip into this type of lyrical content, but here's what's great about Rancid. Here's what's great specifically about Tim Armstrong. There's a certain empathy in his voice and the way it's communicated. I don't think anyone else has ever really honed in on. Just a feel-good song, despite being the band that literally wrote a song about nihilism, that's never been their core message. And they close it with a song that I can't really interpret. Is it about personal relationships or professional relationships? Either way, both of those themes are on this album throughout, and I think it's a perfect way to end this thing. What a discography. What an amazing catalog they have. Just talking about it makes me want to go listen. I think I'm going to do that right now. But what do you think? Did I overrate their work in the 2000s? Did I underrate their debut album and the self-titled album? Should I have actually included Troublemaker and Honor Is All We Know? I don't know. You tell me down below in the comment section. And don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.